من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض ولم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك وخلق كل شيء فقدره تقديرا يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين ودع أذاهم وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وتوكل على العزيز الرحيم الذي يراك حين تقوم وتقلبك في الساجدين إنه هو السميع العليم الصلاة والسلام على الأشرف الأنبياء إمام المرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إنا علينا جمعه وقرآنا فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنا ثم إنا علينا بيانا صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Thanks to all your efforts, we have once again commenced the gathering in the day of Jummah. All praise belongs to Allah for that. He's the one who made this gathering possible, and it is in this gathering that we call upon Him. He is the best of witnesses. To witness this gathering and to bless this gathering for each and every one of us in our lives, for our families, for our work. And it is only Him that we obey, and it is only Him that we ask for help. And it is through this gathering that we invoke Him to guide us all onto the straight path, His path, the Sirat al-Mustaqim, the path of those who came with the true message of Allah, the truth, the book, as referred to in the Quran. And definitely not of those on whom His anger or displeasure was evoked, and neither of those whom strayed from the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. The Quran has many names in the Quran itself, adjectives that Allah gives the book, the Quran. One of them is the Quran al-Azim, which is the great Quran. Another one is the Quran al-Majid, which is the honorable Quran. Then there is the Quran al-Kareem. Does anybody know the meaning of Kareem? It comes from the root word karam. Sometimes in Urdu we say, Allah ka karam se ye hua. So mercy, or more so generosity of Allah. So it's something that's very noble and generous. So the Quran, one of the adjectives that I want to focus on today is the name Kareem. And the Quran is very generous because it gives, it nourishes, it feeds us, and not necessarily of the physical realm, but more so of our spiritual being. It gives that nourishment that we desire and that we need. And so if you want to think of, our phones nowadays, we kind of look at it and it recognizes our face and then it unlocks, right? Kind of analyzes you, looks at your face and then it unlocks and gives you access to the phone. And that's today's technology. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He sent down this book, the Quran in a way analyzes your heart. And if it sees that your heart is ready, it starts opening up and it starts giving you what you need. So, the technology that we have today does it, but Allah He's the one who gave us this technology, this AI or whatever we're experiencing in this day and age. So of course the Quran has a power in it where, it's from the heaven and it sees when you're ready and it starts to give you what you need in order to be guided. And so what I want to do right now is make an analogy of the Quran with water. I know we talked about this in a previous khutbah, but I want to go in a bit more detail about the concept of water. Water as we know it right now, it says in Surah Anbiya, is that Allah has created everything that's living from water. And so it is a very powerful substance. And if you look at the Quran, when it mentions water, it uses the word nazzala minas sama, which means He sends it down from the Quran. From the heavens. And when He mentions the Quran, the same word is used. Anzala ilayka al-Quran. So there's a parallel right there from water and Quran. So what I'm trying to do right now is make a parallel between these two things of water and revelation. Another time in the Quran, it refers to water as mubarakah, blessed. And the Quran itself, throughout the Quran, is referred to as kitabun mubarakah, a blessed book. So we see that, Allah constantly throughout the Quran uses this analogy of giving life to a barren land from the verses, from Revelation. And so if you want to look at water, right, when it comes down on different parts of the earth, you have Florida oranges, Georgia peaches, right? It's the same water that's fertilizing the soil, but two beautiful things come out, different things. And here in Costa Rica, we have pineapples and bananas. I don't know if you know, well, you're the only one that's lived in Pakistan, but when my daughter was 1.5 years old, about the same age as Hanifa right now, my eldest daughter, my dad used to call her Anwar Ratol. Do you know what Anwar Ratol is?
No.
You've lived in Pakistan, right? It's the sweetest mango that comes from Pakistan. And so we see that the same water that hits Pakistan, that hits Canada, that hits Georgia, that hits Florida, that hits Costa Rica, brings out different ways that we can enjoy God's rizq. And so the Quran is very similar. It hits each and every one of our hearts, which is the barren land, in a way that it produces different beautiful things from each and every one of us. And the common thing when you look at nature is when the good things come out, they're a benefit to everything around them. We enjoy the fruits. The plants are there and the trees are there to give us oxygen. And so the Quran, when the verses hit you, they transform you in a way where you're benefiting everything around you. And you're receiving that blessing and you're blessing everything around you as well. So there's that correlation right there between water and revelation. So inshallah, what I want to go over today is ways in which this water, this revelation from the heavens, how can we assure that it is bringing that transformation in us, not only of benefiting everyone around us through our fruits that Allah has extracted from us from this revelation, but also in ways that we can benefit society as a whole by doing good and forbidding that which is evil. So this is Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahina anil Munkar. So inshallah we'll try to cover all this throughout the course of the khutbah. And so ways in which we can extract this benefit, I want to go over one of them today. If you look at the Quran over and over again, it commands us in methods and ways that we can understand the Quran. The first one, it says, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Anybody know the meaning of ta'qilun? It's saying, don't they use their intellect? Don't they reason? That's one of them. أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Don't they remember? Don't they become mindful? Present in the moment, remember. أَفَلَا, and this is the one that I want to go over today. Oh, there's one, أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, which means don't they reflect. And the last one which we want to go over today is أَفَلَا يَتَذَبَّرُونَ. Anybody know the meaning of يَتَذَبَّرُونَ? And this is mentioned 3 times in the Quran from what I know. And I'm going to go over those 3 verses. يَتَذَبَّرُونَ means to contemplate the verses. Like, don't they contemplate these verses of the Quran? So, when I was growing up, I didn't know these things until I read the Quran, that this is the manner in which you have to approach the Quran, is with a presence of mind, with reflection, with remembrance, with using your reason, and with contemplating, thinking about these things. And all of those things have one thing in common: they require time. And in the world that we're living in, we're very pressed, for time. And Allah doesn't ask that much. He asks very little. Come sit down in presence of mind, open up your ears, and start thinking about what I'm telling you. Start reflecting upon what I'm telling you. And through that, in the Eid khutbah, we talked about subuluna, the ways that the bee is guided in Surah Nahl. God has inspired the bee to work in His way. And once it does that, once it submits to His Lord, there's a beautiful beverage that comes out from inside its belly, in which is what? Shifa'a lin-nas, in which is a cure for nas. So again, this concept of following the revelation, and it brings out things which is beneficial to everyone, including yourself around you, And so يَتَذَبَّرُونَ in Surah Muhammad. In Surah Muhammad it says, أَفَلَا يَتَذَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. What does that mean? Have they not contemplated the verses of the Quran, or are there locks on their heart? So let's talk about that for a second. Allah is making a connection here with your mind and your heart. Almost to say that once you start contemplating these passages and these verses and the spirit of the Quran, what it seeks to do is unlock what is in the heart. Okay, so contemplation and using your reason is something pivotal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's given us that in our fitrah. In the way that He's created us, He's given us the ability to think and the ability to reason. And this Quran requires that. But it's not like a philosophy class. I've sat through a philosophy class. It goes over my head. I don't understand it. But the Quran is so deep, but at the same time so accessible to us because Allah has made it, in union with our fitrah, in union with the way that He's created us in our natural inclination, that it speaks to each and every one of us and it extracts that which is forgotten in our souls. Imam Ali alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And Arif, you told me about this this quote of Imam Ali that you have it hung up in your house, or you want to do that?
No,
you have it. So can you inform me what it said? or just the basis of it, right?
The basis of it, that everything is within you.
Yes.
Your sickness is within you.
Yes.
Like everything's within you.
Knowledge as well,
Knowledge
right?
is within
Yes.
you. So if you just contemplate and seek what is good for you, then you will have.
Exactly.
To Imam Ali's sermon.
It's a beautiful quote. It's saying that within you is enfolded the entire universe. If only you what? Come, look inside yourself, contemplate. And if you want to think of the Quran as a sort of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. As you know, we all know that the world that we're living in has a lot of chemical reaction. There's a lot of chemistry going on in the earth. And if we look at our souls, I don't know if you've taken chemistry class, you mix certain things together, there's a reaction that happens, fireworks that happen. So if you want to think of the Quran, the revelation, this waterfall from the sky, as mixing with the dead land, which is your heart, there's a reaction that happens. And that which is enfolded inside of us comes into what? Remembrance. So when Allah keeps on mentioning, أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ, like won't they remember? It's like this is that connection, that cord, that once it hits us, beautiful things start to happen. Beautiful transformations start to happen. There was a study done, they were playing Beethoven music beside a glass of water. Okay, this is Beethoven music, and we're talking about, this is the Quran, okay? And there was water that's taken from a jail, a prison yard, okay, where there's a lot of negative energy. And they compared the two waters, and they saw that the H2O molecule, Assalamu alaikum, in the one that was receiving the Beethoven music, the frequency of that was moving with so much more vigor. It had a different energy to it. Whereas the water that they took from the prison yard was dead, it was still. And similarly, like in the children's park, they took water from that, it was moving, it was vibrant, it had energy. So, sometimes my father always told me, like, take a glass of water, recite the Quran, and, rub it on your kids' heads and the chest and drink it as well. Why? Because this is the truth, scientifically proven today, that when you expose water to something that is vibrant and has energy, and what is a better energy than the word of Allah, subhanAllah, right? So this is the sort of reaction that's happening within us. And that happens through what? Tadabbur. أَفَلَا يَتَذَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَفْقَالُهَا. Have they not reflected upon the Quran, or are there locks on their hearts in Surah Muhammad? Then let's look at another verse in Surah An-Nisa. In Surah An-Nisa, there's another portion where يَتَذَبُّر is mentioned. It says, أَفَلَا يَتَذَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدَ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُهُ فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Do they not reflect upon the Quran? Had it been from any other source than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would have certainly found much contradiction in it. So once again, Allah is encouraging us. He's imploring us now to reflect, to analyze. In my grade 9, grade 10 English class, that was a skill that was taught to us. Analyticals, analyzing literature, and trying to spend some time on it. And the Quran is a blessed book that it's easy. It's easy. Allah has made it easy for us to understand. And so He's saying that if you were to use your reason, your heart would be certain that this Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So once again, that connection between what? Your mind and your heart. And in Surah Anfal, it says, the most hated creatures in the sight of Allah are ones who do not exercise their reason, and are summun bukmun umyun. They're deaf, dumb, and blind. So Allah does not like people who just, follow without contemplating. because that's a cheap sort of belief for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But a very valuable belief is one that has contemplated the signs of Allah, has really affirmed in their hearts that this is the truth from their Lord, and then willfully submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I just want to end this first portion of the khutbah with I was at a chiropractor a couple days ago, and his name is Mark Abbott, a devout Christian, okay? And anyone who's having trouble with their alignment, like I don't know if you remember Shane, my right side, I don't know if you see it now, it's kind of straight, right? So he's a great chiropractor, and your alignment is kind of connected to everything in your body. So I went a couple days ago, and he's a devout Christian, and the entire time he was working on me, adjusting me, he was just telling me about God. And I just let him speak, and I was like, whoa, like this is weird, because whatever he's saying is the spirit of the Quran. Like whatever he's saying, it kind of aligns with the Quran, and it's just so refreshing. And so that made me kind of think that this guy is certainly on the right path. And there's one thing that he told me that stuck with me, and he said, submit to Allah. Submit to God, he said. Each one of us has a purpose that we're not aware of yet. But Revelation seeks to bring that out for us. Just like the Florida oranges and the Georgia peaches, how delicious they are, each and every one of us has something inside of us that Allah is waiting to extract out with the verses, with the word. And he said, submit to your Lord. He will take care of the rest. You just do what you need to do and obey your Lord, and everything else. We worry about our money, we worry about our family, we worry about our health. We worry about so many things, but Allah says, you know what, just do what I command you in the Quran, and I'll take care of the rest. And once that comes in your life, and once you realize that, it affirms your faith more and more and more. Inshallah, we can all become ones that contemplate the verses of the Quran. This is a direct command from Allah. And we teach our kids so many other things, but I feel like that's lacking in our community, this aspect of contemplation. And we can teach our kids, we can teach ourselves to spend some time with the Quran and to reflect on its verses. Inshallah, we can all be guided to the straight path, to find our purpose in this world. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And to be first and foremost in submission to Allah, and through that submission, we can benefit ourselves and everyone around us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wal-Asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد. بسم الله الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد كان في قصصهم عبرة لأولي الألباب ما كان حديثا يفترى ما كان حديثا يفترى ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه وتفصيل كل شيء وهدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد. The verse that I just quoted is the very last ayah of Surah Al-Yusuf. Ayah 111. It has 111 verses in the Quran. The very last ayah, it says, وَمَنْ كَانَ فِي لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Okay? That means that certainly in these stories is a moral. Ibaratan means a moral and a lesson. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةً لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ is one who reasons, who thinks. Again, this concept of finding the morals in these stories. So as we know, the Quran is a narration of the past, what we need to do here in the present moment, and a naba, which means a news of what's to come in the future. So it covers all three aspects in this timeline. And so now Allah is saying that, in these stories, in history, and I'm giving you the true account of history, Allah is saying. This is the qasas al-haq. This is the story of truth, whether it be Nabi Musa's story, Nabi Isa's story, Nabi Hud's story, Nabi Ad, Nabi Thamud's story. All of them have a similar ibarah, a lesson, a moral. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصٍ عِبَرَةً لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ مَا كَانَ حَدِيثًا يُفْتَرَى. This hadith, this discourse, this book is not fabricated. ما كان حديثا يفترى ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه. But in fact, it is a tasdeeq. Tasdeeq means a confirmation, the truth of what has happened before. Bayna yaday, and the truth of the scriptures that came before it. وَتَفْصِيلَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, an elaboration of all things. وَتَفْصِيلَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً, a guidance and a mercy لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ, for the people who believe. So it's such a deep verse that you can extract so many layers from it, but what I want to pick out on this verse for this portion of the khutbah is the aspect of ibrah. Ibrah means a lesson. So there's so many lessons in the stories, but I want to take out one lesson today from Surah Al-Hud. Okay? And Surah Al-Hud is a classic example of a surah that goes over narration, over narration, over narration, story of the prophets, and it shares a similar thread. And that's the ibrah in it. And at the end of Surah Hud, now it explains one of the ibrah from these stories. And if you look at verse number 116 of Surah Al-Hud, if you guys have time, later on today or throughout the week, I truly encourage you, implore you to recite Surah Hud. It's a beautiful surah, and at the end, the conclusion wraps it up perfectly. It says in surah number 116, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلولا كان من قرون من قبلكم أولو بقية ينهون عن الفساد في الأرض إلا قليلا ممن أنجينا منهم واتبع الذين ظلموا ما أترفوا فيه وكانوا مجرمين وما كان ربك ليهلك القرى بظلم وأهلها مصلحون. So it says in the translation, why were there not among the generations before you? Okay, so it's taking us back to our history. And now this is an ibrah, this is a lesson of the surah. Why were there not among the generations before you a remnant of the wise who might forbid corruption in the land? Except a few. Illa qalila, except very little. Of those whom we delivered from among them. Those who were wrongdoers pursued gratification in the means of affluence they had been granted. And they were a guilty lot. Your Lord would never destroy the townships unjustly while their inhabitants were bringing about reform. Okay? Do you want me to repeat that again? It was very important. This is the conclusion of Surah Hud. It says, why were there not among the generations before you a remnant of the wise who might forbid corruption in the land, except a few of those whom we delivered from among them? Those who were wrongdoers pursued gratification in the means of affluence they had been granted, and they were a guilty lot. Your Lord would never destroy the townships unjustly while their inhabitants were bringing about reform. So in this Surah Hud, what is happening is that the warner comes down to every nation. The different prophets, the warners comes down. The people deny. Majority of the people deny. Okay, and they get destroyed. So now Allah is saying that why weren't there more of the remnant of the wise? Like, what has happened? So again, it's pointing towards what? Nahayna anil munkar. It says, why weren't there more of people who forbade evil when this happened? So time and time again in the Quran, there's a punishment that comes down from Allah when the society is corrupt, is so evil. And is enslaved to taghut, is enslaved to shaitan. And the people who get saved are the ones who have stood firm in patience, in that active patience that we spoke about, that grit, and held on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is saying, why weren't there more of these people in history? So how do we apply that to us right now? They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So are we taking an ibrah? Are we taking a lesson from the stories of the past? What is happening right now? Trouble. Whether we want to accept it or not, evil has presented itself in front of our eyes. And I'm not trying to discourage anybody. This is the truth from the Quran. This is not I'm so low, evil's come, what do we do? No. Allah has said He's given us a means out of this as well. Forbid the evil. There's a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When you see an evil happening before your eyes, stop it with your hands first and foremost. If you cannot do it with your hands, do it with your tongue. If you cannot do it with your tongue, then at least in your heart disassociate from that evil. And in the Quran, over and over again, the prophets disassociated themselves. I am void. I'm away from what you're doing. That's what the Prophet said to the people of Arabia, the Quraysh as well. That's what Nabi Isa said to the Bani Israel. That's what baby Maryam, before she got the revelation that she was going to get Nabi Isa, alayhi salam, she disassociated herself from the wrongdoers. So there's a spiritual battle that's happening right now, and within each and every one of ourselves, we have to spiritually disassociate ourselves from this propaganda that's going on worldwide. Okay? Or else, and the warning is true, this isn't truth. You know? It says in Surah Qaf, وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةَ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ. The intoxication of death will bring the truth to you. We don't want to wait till that. And then man will say, send me back. Send me back so I can forbid all that was going on that was evil, and I can do righteousness. Amar bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Too late, Allah will say. You know, and the barzakh will be set up, a barrier, so they cannot cross back into the realm of the world. So what are we waiting for? You know, isn't it high time right now that we use the Quran to soften our hearts? You know, it says in Surah Hadid, a long time had passed, Revelation is talking about the Bani Israel. A long moment had passed and their hearts got hard. You know? And how many years have passed since Revelation to Rasulullah? 1400, 1500 years. We can't let our hearts get hard. And not coincidentally, purposefully, Allah put right after that in Surah Hadid, that verse, and know that we revive a dead land after it is dead. So our hearts may be hardened, but that's not why we lose hope. We have this chemical reaction right here that's going to mingle with us, mingle with our hearts, and bring about great fruits and ways and courage for us to speak out. You know, there's nothing to fear. Allah said, "La takhaf wa la tahzan." Don't fear and don't grieve. I am here with you. Rely on me. Wa tawakkal ala Allah. Wa kafa billahi wakila. And enough is Allah as a wakil, you know, as one that you can trust. So you know, Mahdi, I know we talk about this a lot too, but you know, we have to have the courage right now for Allah first and foremost, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He has ordered us to do this. Or else, you know, when that salvation comes, it says in Surah Kahf, there's not one town across the world that we will leave, but it'll get destroyed before the day of judgment. Just like the isolated punishments that came down to the Qawm Hud, you know, Qawm of Ad, Qawm of Thamud. It's coming. Darkness is evil darknesses. What period are we in right now? There is no mention of God's word in the world. They're hypocrites. You know, there's people who say that we are Muslims, but they're not Muslims. Mention of God in the schools in Canada is what? Forbidden. In sports events now it's forbidden. There's other flags coming out. You know, I'm not going to get into detail what it is, but it's a very colorful flag. And flags usually represent what? Ideologies, religions, stuff that we can be loyal to. We are loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are His servants. We are in submission to Him and Him alone. And He has commanded us now. Stand up, you know, and do what I've told you, and you will see the benefits and you will get the salvation. Because in the end, the akhirah is much more important than this world that we're experiencing right now. And inshallah, you know, for my own progeny, for my parents, I ask for forgiveness, and I ask Allah to guide us all onto the straight path, and that, you know, we can become followers of Muhammad Ali Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We can wear that as a badge of honor on our souls, that we are from Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And once again, great turnout today. If we can just be more consistent in doing this, I think it's a great thing. We have a great masjid here, man. Beautiful masjid here. We have musalla here, and if we can make more use of it, Allah will be very happy with us, first and foremost. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Salawat.